Hey everyone! Before we dive deep into today's incredibly fascinating and eye-opening story, I want to start with a question that will really make you think about what survival truly means in the most extreme conditions. Now, picture this. You're living in a land where winters don't just come and go, they dominate everything. These winters feel endless, like the cold is a force of nature that refuses to let go. The temperatures are so cold that it's like the very air itself is frozen, a place where your breath can crystallize before you even exhale. Imagine a place where the temperature regularly drops to an astonishing -40 degrees Celsius. The air is thick with cold, and everything around you is frozen, still, and seemingly uninhabitable. But here's the kicker. There's no central heating, no electric blankets, no cozy fires to retreat to. The cold is not just a nuisance, it's your constant, relentless enemy. For months at a time, you must face it head-on, every single day, with no reprieve. So, what do you do? How do you survive when the very world around you turns into a frozen wasteland? Would you find shelter in caves, build a fire, and pray it's enough to stave off the cold? Or, like the ancient Mongols, would you have to get creative, relying on your ingenuity, instincts, and sheer resourcefulness to survive? Take a moment to really think about that. In a world where nature itself is your greatest adversary, where the cold is so intense it feels like a physical force trying to freeze you in place, what would your strategy be to survive? How would you adapt to such extreme conditions, where the environment is constantly testing your limits and pushing you to the brink? Would you seek shelter in the natural landscape, build tools to help you endure, or find innovative ways to use the limited resources at your disposal? Imagine what it would take to not just survive, but to thrive in those conditions. I'm really curious to hear your ideas, so drop them in the comments below. How would you adapt to the challenges the Mongols faced? Maybe you've come up with a survival plan that's just as clever, or even more resourceful, than the strategies the Mongols used. This is your chance to get creative and share your thoughts with the community. Let's get the conversation going, and I'll be reading through all your responses, looking for the most inventive and inspiring ideas. Who knows? Some of your ideas might surprise you, and they might just be the key to surviving in some of the world's most extreme environments. Your strategies could open up new possibilities for others who are looking to push their own limits and conquer their own challenges. It's a reminder that sometimes the best ideas come from unexpected places. So let's keep the conversation alive. Your creativity could inspire someone else to find the resilience they need when facing their own harsh battles. And hey, if you're someone who's truly passionate about history, survival, and the incredible stories of human resilience that have shaped our world, then let me tell you, you're absolutely in the right place. This channel is all about diving deep into the fascinating stories of individuals and communities who face seemingly insurmountable challenges and emerge stronger, smarter, and more determined. Trust me when I say, you don't want to miss out on the incredible journey we're about to take together. So, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps the channel grow and lets us know we're on the right track, bringing you the content you love and crave. But that's not all. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you'll always be the first to know when we drop our latest videos. Whether it's uncovering the untold survival strategies of ancient civilizations or exploring the resourcefulness of those who lived in extreme conditions, we've got a ton of exciting content lined up that you won't want to miss. From survival tips and techniques that have been passed down through generations, to some of the most mind-blowing and inspiring stories of human resilience, we're just getting started. There's so much more to come, and I promise you, Each story is packed with lessons that can change the way you look at challenges, whether they're physical, mental, or emotional. So make sure to stay tuned, because you're not only going to learn, but you'll be inspired, motivated, and amazed at the power of human adaptability and determination. Together, we're building a community that's all about learning from the past, growing through adversity, and thriving in the face of the most extreme conditions. So hit that subscribe button, and let's make sure you never miss a moment of this incredible journey ahead. And here's a little challenge for you. Think of someone you know who's into history, survival, or just enjoys hearing stories about people overcoming extreme challenges. Share this video with them. Let's grow this community of curious minds who love to learn and be inspired by how humans have adapted to survive some of the harshest conditions the Earth can throw at us. Plus, the more views and engagement we get, the more awesome content I can bring you in the future. So hit that share button, spread the word, and let's keep the conversation going. We're just getting started, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Together, let's embark on this incredible journey and dive deep into today's story. We're about to explore how people like the Mongols, whose world was shaped by some of the harshest, most unforgiving winters imaginable, not only survived, but flourished in conditions that most would have found utterly impossible. Picture it. Vast frozen plains stretching as far as the eye can see. Temperatures so low that even the air itself feels like it's fighting against you. And yet, in this seemingly inhospitable environment, the Mongols built lives, communities, and an empire that would become one of the most powerful the world has ever known. As we move forward, we're going to uncover the extraordinary resilience and resourcefulness that allowed the Mongols to thrive in these extreme conditions. We'll look at the strategies they used, the clever ways they adapted, and how their survival in the harshest of winters became the foundation for one of history's most successful and far-reaching empires. You'll see how they turned adversity into opportunity, and how their intimate knowledge of the land and climate became their greatest strength. So buckle up, because this is going to be a journey unlike any other. It's not just about survival, it's about discovering the unbreakable spirit that lives within us all. Whether you're facing your own personal challenges or simply fascinated by the ingenuity of those who came before us, today's story is a reminder that with determination, creativity, and a deep connection to the world around us, we can overcome even the harshest obstacles. Get ready to be inspired, because the story we're about to uncover is one for the ages, and you won't want to miss a single moment of it. All right, now that we've got the ball rolling, let's really dig into this incredible story. Close your eyes for a second and let your imagination take you to a time long ago. Picture this. It's the dead of winter, and you're in the middle of the Mongolian steppe. The winds are shrieking like a wild beast outside your home, and the air is so cold that each breath feels like it could freeze your lungs. You step outside, and your skin immediately feels the sting of the icy wind. The snow is thick, and the land is vast, barren, and unforgiving. You look around, and there's nothing but white, as far as the eye can see. The temperature is -40 degrees Celsius, colder than most of us can even imagine. The cold cuts through your bones, seeping into every part of you. But here's the catch, you're not just trying to make it through the night. You live in these conditions. This is your life. How do you survive when the very world around you seems determined to freeze you to death? No electric heater, no warm clothes from the store, no nice blankets to curl up under at night. And worst of all, no way to simply escape the cold. The land is so remote and the winter so fierce that escape seems impossible. You're stuck here in this frozen world. Yet the real question is, How do you not just survive, but make this frozen wilderness your home? This is where the Mongol way of life comes in. But the thing is, the Mongols didn't just survive these conditions. No, they thrived. And here's the most astonishing part. They didn't have anything that we would consider essential to survive in extreme cold. No electric heaters, no central heating, no technology to keep them warm. Their clothes were far from the modern fabrics that are designed to trap heat and wick moisture away. Their homes? Simple yurts made of wool and felt, and the warmth inside came not from electric blankets, but from a wood and dung-powered stove, carefully maintained through the bitterest of nights. The cold was constant, but so was their resilience. Now let that sink in for a moment. The people who lived in one of the coldest places on Earth didn't just endure, they built entire lives and empires that flourished in the harshest of environments. These were not people who had the luxury of modern technology or heat when it got cold. They didn't have the privilege of just flicking a switch to turn on the heat, or having a heated car to drive through the freezing roads. They didn't have any of the things we take for granted today, things that many of us have come to see as necessary for life. Yet, against all odds, they thrived. Their survival wasn't about luck. It was about resilience. It was about being incredibly resourceful. It was about making use of everything around you and adapting to the land in ways that would seem impossible to us today. The Mongols were masters of adaptation. In a place where the winters could last half the year, where the land was vast, unyielding, and covered in snow for months, the Mongols turned survival into an art. They didn't just fight against the elements. They learned to work with them, to understand the rhythms of the land, the winds, the snowstorms, and the animal migrations. They used everything the land gave them, from the wool of their sheep and the fur of their yaks, to the dried dung of their herds, which would keep their homes warm when nothing else could. Imagine, for a moment, how it must feel to be surrounded by nothing but snow and ice. To look out and see a world so hostile, so cold, that it seems impossible to thrive. Yet the Mongols took that very world and made it their own. They didn't just survive the bitter winds and freezing temperatures, they adapted to them, building homes that could withstand the storm, developing clothing that could insulate against the cold, and learning how to hunt and track in ways that allowed them to find food even in the dead of winter. In the face of all the odds, they didn't just stay alive, they built an empire that spanned continents. And think about the legacy that was born out of this survival. The Mongol Empire, one of the largest empires in history, was forged in the fires of these extreme conditions. It wasn't built with luxury or ease. It was built through resourcefulness, perseverance, and an understanding of how to live with the land rather than against it. It's a testament to the power of resilience and ingenuity. Against the unforgiving cold and harsh winds, they not only survived, they became one of the most powerful and feared civilizations in the world. So, the next time you think about what it means to survive, think of the Mongols. Think of the resilience they showed, not just in enduring the cold, but in using it to shape their strength. They didn't sit and wait for things to get better. They adapted, they thrived, and they created something that would stand the test of time. It's a reminder to all of us that no matter how harsh our surroundings may seem, with enough ingenuity, determination, and resilience, we too can turn even the most challenging circumstances into opportunities to grow, adapt, and thrive. Let's start with their homes. When you think of a home, you probably picture a sturdy house with thick walls, a roof that doesn't leak, and a warm, cozy fireplace. But the Mongols didn't have that luxury. Instead, they lived in yurts, circular, portable homes made from wood, felt, and animal skins. But here's where it gets truly remarkable. These weren't just tents. These yurts were designed to withstand the worst of the Mongolian winter. Their circular shape wasn't just for aesthetic purposes. It was a survival tool. The round shape of the yurt allowed it to resist the powerful, cold winds that roamed the steppes. The felt used to cover the yurt was made from wool, which naturally repels the cold and keeps the warmth inside. The yurts were a complete work of engineering brilliance, where each piece was carefully crafted to ensure warmth, even in temperatures that would freeze most of us solid. And the heart of the yurt? It wasn't just the walls or the roof, it was the hirg, the stove at the center of the home. This stove was a lifesaver. It wasn't just used for cooking food, it was used to heat the entire yurt. Powered by wood, dung, and even dried manure, it provided the only source of warmth, and in turn, allowed the family to survive the night in temperatures that would make most people's blood run cold. The Mongolian stove was more than just a stove, it was the lifeline of every family in the harsh Mongolian winters. But don't just think about their homes, think about their clothing. The Mongols didn't have the kind of modern clothes we wear today, no high-tech fabrics or fancy gear. Instead, they wore thick, fur-lined coats made from the hides of yaks, camels, and sheep. Imagine how these coats were designed not for fashion, but for survival. They were built in layers, each one trapping air and heat, keeping the cold from penetrating their bodies. Their boots, hats, gloves all were made from animal fur, lined and insulated to perfection. The Mongols knew how to keep every part of their body warm, because when it's that cold, even the smallest amount of heat escaping from a crack in your clothing could be the difference between life and death. And here's where it gets even more mind-blowing. It wasn't just the physical structures and clothing that helped them survive. It was their way of life. The Mongols were masterful in how they used everything in their environment, every animal, every tree, every scrap of food, and every gust of wind. They knew how to hunt, how to track animals in the snow, how to gather resources to make their homes and clothing, and how to live off the land in a way that ensured they'd make it through the harshest conditions. So stay with me, because what you're about to discover will truly inspire you. In the coming minutes, we'll take a deep dive into how the Mongols survived these extreme temperatures, not just by brute force, but through pure ingenuity and a deep understanding of nature. Their methods were ahead of their time, and in many ways, they still hold lessons for us today. You'll see how their homes, their clothing, and their daily routines were designed to not just survive, but thrive through conditions that would freeze most of us to the bone. By the end of this video, you'll have a newfound respect for the ingenuity and resilience of the Mongol people. And who knows, you might even walk away with a few survival tips that could help you when facing extreme conditions in your own life. So, stay tuned, because you won't want to miss a single moment of this incredible story. Before we can truly appreciate how the Mongols survived and even thrived in one of the harshest climates on Earth, we need to first understand the land they called home. Picture this. You're standing alone on the vast Mongolian steppes, surrounded by an endless expanse of land that stretches far into the horizon. There are no towering mountains to break the view, no dense forests to offer shelter from the winds, just wide, barren plains, with nothing but the howling winds and the occasional silhouette of an animal or the distant movement of a nomadic tribe. The sky above is a constant, oppressive gray, hanging low and heavy, as if the heavens themselves are weighed down by the cold. There is no sun to warm your face, no respite from the elements. The earth beneath your feet is frozen solid, a hard, unyielding surface that offers no comfort. The wind here is like a living thing, relentless, unyielding, and powerful. It cuts through you like a blade, biting at your exposed skin and tearing through your clothes. With every gust, It feels as though it could sweep you off your feet, lifting you from the earth and carrying you away. The cold isn't just a chill in the air, it is a force that presses against you, an invisible hand that seems to tighten around your body with each passing minute. The grasslands are covered with a thick carpet of snow, and what was once a vibrant landscape of greens and yellows has now become a silent, frozen wasteland. The snow, dense and heavy, blankets the land, piling up in drifts that hide the paths and make every movement a battle. Imagine this. The cold is so sharp that it feels as though it's slicing through your skin with every breath you take. When you inhale, your lungs burn with the bitter air, and your body struggles to stay warm. The cold doesn't just chill you, it sinks into your very bones, stealing the warmth from your muscles and your heart. Temperatures regularly plummet to -40 degrees Celsius, and even on the coldest days, when the sun might briefly peek through the clouds, the wind still roars relentlessly, carrying a cold that penetrates deep into your body, leaving no part untouched. There's no place to escape it, no shelter in sight. It's as if the entire world is made of ice, and you're standing alone in the center of it, helpless against the cold that surrounds you. This isn't a cold that simply makes you uncomfortable, it's deadly. The elements are not just a nuisance here, they're a constant threat to survival. In these conditions, frostbite can set in before you even realize it, turning your fingers and toes into lifeless blocks of ice. Even the simplest tasks become almost impossible. Imagine having to gather firewood or fetch water in this kind of weather. Your body fights against the cold with every step, and you must push through sheer willpower just to keep moving. The Mongols didn't have the luxury of seeking warmth or shelter in a nearby village or town. There were no cozy homes to retreat to, no fireplaces to huddle around. They had to live in this extreme cold, day after day, month after month, learning how to survive in conditions that would break most other people. The land, the Mongolian steppes, wasn't just their home, it was their greatest challenge. The weather didn't just shape their existence, it defined it, carving their very way of life into the bones of the earth. The fierce, cold, biting winds and endless snowstorms weren't mere inconveniences to be endured. They were the harsh, unforgiving forces that governed every decision, every movement, every breath taken. The Mongols knew that their survival depended not only on their ability to withstand the elements, but on their ability to understand them, to anticipate them, and to outsmart them. There was no escaping the cold, no place to hide from the relentless storms that swept across the plains, transforming the vast steppes into a frozen wasteland. The harsh winters could drop temperatures to -40 degrees Celsius, a cold so brutal it could freeze skin in minutes and sap the strength from even the hardest of people. Yet, in this land of extremes, survival was not about seeking refuge from the storm, it was about learning how to live with it, how to use its very force to fuel your resilience. The Mongols didn't just adapt to their environment, they thrived in it. They built portable homes, yurts, designed to withstand the worst of the storms, and developed methods to keep their herds alive in the most severe conditions. In this environment, you couldn't afford to be weak. There was no room for hesitation, no time to doubt. The land demanded every ounce of strength, not just from the body, but from the mind and the spirit. Weakness was not a luxury anyone could afford. The Mongols quickly learned that survival wasn't simply about brute strength, it was about adaptation, resourcefulness, and an unyielding will to survive. It was about understanding that the key to mastering the land wasn't to fight against it, but to flow with it, to use its very rhythms to your advantage. This deep connection with the land taught them how to make use of what little it offered, how to hunt in the deep snow, how to track animals through the blizzards, how to read the weather like a seasoned traveler. They learned to use every element, every animal, every part of nature to stay alive. They built fires not just to cook food, but to warm themselves, to light the dark nights that seemed to stretch on forever. Their clothes were crafted with layers of fur, each piece carefully designed to trap warmth and protect them from the biting wind. Their diets were based on the animals they could herd, slaughter, and preserve, making every ounce of meat, every drop of milk, a precious resource for survival. But perhaps the most important lesson they learned was the need to keep moving. In a land where the seasons could change with frightening speed, where storms could block entire paths and freeze entire herds in their tracks, staying in one place for too long was a death sentence. The Mongols understood that they couldn't afford to be tied down. They had to remain mobile, to stay ahead of the cold, the snow, the storms. The nomadic lifestyle wasn't a choice for them. It was the only way to ensure their survival. It was their greatest strength. And it was a constant reminder that to survive in the steppes, you had to keep moving, adapting, and learning from the land every single day. The Mongols didn't just endure the elements, they became masters of them. Every storm that swept across the plains, every snowstorm that buried their homes, was an opportunity for them to test their strength, refine their strategies, and prove that they could thrive where others would fall. It was in these harsh conditions, with the cold pressing against their bones and the wind howling through their yurts, that they forged their unbreakable spirit, learning not just to survive, but to flourish in a world that seemed determined to crush them underfoot. Now, you can begin to see why the extreme weather wasn't just an inconvenience for the Mongols, it was a constant adversary. The intensity of the cold wasn't just something that happened in the winter, it was something that shaped every aspect of Mongol life, forcing them to adapt in ways that most people could never imagine. The Mongols couldn't simply settle into a warm, insulated home during the colder months. They had to remain mobile, constantly shifting to find better grazing grounds for their herds and to avoid the worst of the weather. The extreme cold, paired with the relentless wind and harsh snowstorms, made it impossible to stay in one place for too long. The nomadic lifestyle wasn't a choice. It was a survival necessity. Every storm, every gust of wind, was a reminder that their survival depended on constant movement and adaptability. As we move into the next section, we'll see how the extreme weather, particularly the fierce snowstorms and blizzards, presented not just physical challenges, but mental ones as well. The Mongols didn't simply endure these storms. They had to predict them, prepare for them, and adapt to them, using every bit of their knowledge of the land and their resources to overcome what would have been insurmountable odds for most people. In the Mongolian steppes, the winter is not just a passing inconvenience. It is a force of nature that dominates every aspect of life. The cold doesn't simply settle in for a few months. It attacks in a way that wears down both the body and the spirit. Imagine waking up on a freezing morning to see frost not just on the outside of your shelter, but on the inside as well. Your breath crystallizes in the air, and you feel the bitter chill of the night creeping into your skin as you try to move. It's not the kind of cold that you can shrug off. It presses into you, draining your strength with every step you take. It's a weight that doesn't just sit on your shoulders. It feels like it wraps around you, suffocating you, pushing you to your limits. Every moment is a battle. Even the simplest tasks, like lighting a fire, fetching water, or moving your limbs, feel like monumental efforts. The wind howls outside, cutting through any protection you've built, carrying the cold and making it feel even worse than it really is. The land itself, in all its desolation, seems determined to freeze you to your core. The snowstorms that blanket the land are not like the soft, peaceful snowfall of other places. No, here, the snow comes down in heavy, dense sheets, and it piles up quickly. It's a hard-packed mass that accumulates so fast it can block entire paths, turning what once might have been an easy journey into an exhausting, treacherous ordeal. The land becomes a maze of white, with no discernible path or landmark to guide you. When the storms come, the visibility is so poor that even the most experienced Mongol travelers could get lost in the blinding whiteness. These blizzards are not just uncomfortable, they are life-threatening. A sudden storm can sweep across the land so violently that it swallows entire villages, leaving them stranded under a thick blanket of snow, cut off from the outside world. The Mongols didn't just have to endure these snowstorms, they had to anticipate them. They didn't wait for the storm to catch them off guard, they prepared for it. They had to learn to read the signs, the direction of the wind, the change in the temperature, the way the sky looked. Every day was a test of their ability to predict the weather, to know when it was time to move, to seek shelter, and to protect their herds and families. The snowstorms didn't just come and go, they could last for days. Visibility was reduced to almost nothing, and even the most well-worn paths could disappear in an instant. A traveler could step out of a shelter to find the world completely transformed, a never-ending white expanse with no way to tell where the horizon begins or ends. When these storms struck, the Mongols had to be ready to shelter quickly, to set up camp in a matter of moments, and protect themselves from the freezing winds. It wasn't just about finding shelter, it was about staying safe long enough for the storm to pass. It was a constant balancing act of predicting, preparing, and acting at the right moment. They didn't have the luxury of waiting for a forecast, they had to rely on centuries of experience, knowledge passed down through generations. In these extreme conditions, survival became not just about physical strength, but about mental resilience. The weather wasn't just a nuisance, it was an enemy that had to be outsmarted. And in this battle, the Mongols were masters. They were intimately connected to the land and the weather, knowing that their very survival depended on understanding the forces they were up against. They had to be constantly vigilant, always prepared to react when the weather changed. They learned to move quickly, to anticipate storms, and avoid getting caught unprepared. The harshness of the weather required them to be innovative in ways that are hard to imagine. The very nature of the Mongolian winters shaped them, teaching them to be resourceful, to create solutions for every challenge, and to stay ahead of the cold's relentless pursuit. This extreme weather wasn't just a challenge for the Mongols, it was the backdrop for their daily existence, and their ability to survive in it relied heavily on their nomadic lifestyle, which we discussed earlier. The cold wasn't just a single threat, it was part of the constant unpredictability they faced. Their nomadic existence gave them the flexibility they needed to escape or adapt to the worst of the conditions. When a storm came in, the Mongols didn't wait for it to freeze them in place. They packed up their yurts, gathered their herds, and moved to a new location, one that might offer better shelter, more food, or simply a safer environment to ride out the storm. In the face of these extreme weather conditions, the nomadic lifestyle wasn't just a matter of convenience, it was a critical survival strategy. The Mongols couldn't afford to stay in one place when the weather became too harsh. Their ability to move quickly, to always be ready to relocate at a moment's notice, was one of the key reasons they were able to survive in such a challenging environment. The snowstorms, while brutal, weren't enough to stop them. They adapted by learning the patterns of nature and preparing their families and animals for the worst. They embraced the challenge, understanding that mobility, knowledge, and preparation were the only ways to ensure their survival in such an extreme climate. The winter in Mongolia is not like the winters most of us experience in other parts of the world. It's not the kind of cold that simply arrives and settles in. It's a cold that attacks. In the depths of winter, temperatures can plunge so low that water freezes instantly. Rivers and streams that once flowed freely become frozen, unyielding sheets of ice. What was once a vibrant, flowing landscape turns into a barren and silent wilderness. The very land itself seems to harden and become still, as though the earth itself is bracing against the wind's fury. The cold isn't just an inconvenience in Mongolia, it's an enemy, one that relentlessly saps strength and life from everything it touches. In these conditions, survival isn't guaranteed. It demands resourcefulness, strength, and above all, a deep understanding of the environment. The cold affects everything: the land, the animals, and even the people themselves. Your breath freezes in the air, and even simple movements become difficult. Each step feeling like you're wading through thick mud, your body fighting the intense chill that permeates every layer of your clothing. Fingers and toes quickly lose feeling, and frostbite can set in before you even realize it, turning a routine task into a potentially life-threatening ordeal. Even the animals, which the Mongols relied on for food, clothing, and warmth, are not exempt. They, too, feel the sting of the cold. For the Mongols, the bitter cold meant that their survival wasn't just dependent on finding food and shelter. It meant they had to protect their herds and animals from freezing, as their livelihood depended on them. Water, once a basic necessity, becomes a challenge. The rivers, lakes, and streams that would typically be vital sources of water are frozen, and the Mongols must find alternative sources, often relying on melted snow or ice. But the Mongols didn't just face the cold, they adapted. They learned not just to endure it, but to harness it. They adapted every part of their lifestyle to combat the unrelenting winter. From their homes and clothing to the way they managed their herds, the Mongols used every available resource to survive the deep freeze. The yurts, their portable homes, were designed to trap heat and shelter them from the wind, while the felt used in their construction was made from wool, an insulating material perfect for warding off the cold. Their clothing, made of layered fur and animal hides, was carefully crafted to provide warmth and protect against the freezing temperatures, keeping the cold from creeping into their bones. But survival wasn't just about shelter, it was about finding a way to keep moving, to stay flexible, and to adapt to the changing landscape. And this is where the Mongols' nomadic lifestyle came in. The extreme cold and the isolation it brought made it impossible to stay in one place for too long. The harsh winters forced the Mongols to constantly be on the move, following their herds to find fresh grazing ground and new sources of food and water. When the cold grew too intense in one area, they packed up their yurts and relocated, seeking refuge in regions that might offer slightly warmer temperatures, more grazing land, or more access to water. The constant movement was their best defense against the unrelenting cold. Staying in one place was simply too dangerous, as the land could freeze over in a matter of days, leaving them stranded with no resources. The cold didn't just impact the physical world, it had a psychological toll as well. The isolation of the steppes, compounded by the frigid temperatures, could easily wear down even the strongest mind. There were no bustling cities to retreat to, no places of comfort and warmth. The Mongols faced the cold alone, with only their families and small communities to provide emotional support. But even in the face of these challenges, the Mongols faced the cold bravely, turning it from an obstacle into a strategic tool. They understood that the key to survival lay in adapting to the land, using it to their advantage rather than fighting against it. The cold forced them to become masters of resourcefulness, finding ways to make use of every part of the land, from the animals they raised to the very snow that fell around them. The winter in Mongolia was not just a season, it was a test. It was a test of endurance, resilience, and mental toughness. And it wasn't just about surviving the cold. It was about outsmarting it. The Mongols learned to predict the weather, to anticipate storms, and to move when the conditions demanded it. Their survival depended not just on their physical strength but on their ability to adapt quickly, to respond to the ever-changing challenges that the cold in the land presented. This unrelenting cold directly ties into the Mongols' nomadic lifestyle. The extreme winters forced them to develop a lifestyle built around movement, flexibility, and constant adaptation. It wasn't just that the Mongols chose to be nomads, they had to be nomads to survive. The cold demanded mobility, and the nomadic way of life became the ultimate survival strategy. By staying on the move, they could avoid the worst of the cold, find new grazing grounds for their herds, and stay one step ahead of nature's wrath. But this resilience, born out of the cold, was not limited to survival alone. It became the foundation for something even greater. It was this very mindset, shaped by years of enduring harsh winters and unpredictable landscapes, that would fuel the rise of the Mongol Empire. The extreme conditions of the steppes honed their ability to think on their feet, to be resourceful and quick to adapt. It taught them how to move as one cohesive force, constantly changing, constantly evolving. And it was in this environment, amid the cold and harshness, that Genghis Khan rose to prominence. Genghis Khan himself embodied the very spirit of adaptability that the Mongols had mastered. As a leader, he took the lessons of survival from the steppes and applied them to warfare. The Mongols didn't just rely on brute strength or superior numbers. They used their mobility, agility, and intelligence to outmaneuver enemies. The harsh winters had taught them how to move quickly, strike unexpectedly, and retreat when needed. These skills were translated into battle tactics that shocked the world and built an empire that spanned continents. The extreme cold forced them to innovate, to use the resources available to them in creative ways. They didn't just endure the conditions, they turned them into a strength. The yurts, with their felt-covered walls and portable design, were a direct response to the cold. Their clothing, designed for maximum insulation, was created to withstand the freezing temperatures and keep their bodies warm. And their animals, vital for both survival and mobility, were carefully managed to ensure they could survive the winter too. In the end, the cold and the nomadic lifestyle were inextricably linked. The harshness of the environment made the Mongols' movement not just a matter of preference, but a matter of survival. The constant need to relocate, to follow the herds, and to seek new resources became a strategic necessity. This lifestyle wasn't just about the physical act of moving, it was about staying mentally sharp, adapting to each season, and outwitting nature at every turn. The Mongols didn't settle in one place. The extreme weather and vast, unpredictable land forced them to become nomads. But this wasn't just a lifestyle choice, it was an essential survival tactic. In the face of one of the harshest climates on Earth, the Mongols had no choice but to remain constantly mobile, moving with the seasons and the shifting weather. When the cold became too unbearable in one region, they would pack up their homes, yurts, designed specifically for mobility, and move with their herds of horses, cattle, and camels. Imagine a life where you are always ready to leave at a moment's notice, constantly packing and unpacking, setting up and tearing down, all while battling the brutal weather. The cold was never far away, and the land was unforgiving. The Mongols understood that survival wasn't just about enduring the conditions, it was about staying ahead of them. Every season required a new strategy. The wind could shift, the temperatures could plummet, and the land could freeze in the blink of an eye. To stay alive, the Mongols needed to keep moving. The cold, which would have broken most, became the Mongols' greatest teacher, shaping their way of life and forging them into one of the most resilient and adaptable peoples in history. In the biting winds and freezing temperatures, the Mongols learned not only to endure, but to thrive. It was in these harsh, unforgiving conditions that they honed their ingenuity, turning a seemingly insurmountable challenge into the very thing that gave them their strength. From the early days of their existence as a nomadic people, they understood that survival wasn't just about muscle, it was about intelligence, adaptability, and an unyielding spirit. And it was in this crucible of hardship that Genghis Khan's leadership emerged. Genghis Khan was more than just a conqueror. He was the embodiment of the Mongol way of life. He rose from the most challenging of circumstances, knowing that every step of his journey had been shaped by the brutal steppes. The very same adaptability, resourcefulness, and perseverance that had been essential for surviving the unforgiving winters were what made his empire building so successful. When Genghis Khan looked beyond the vast expanse of the Mongolian steppe, he saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. He didn't just bring an army, he brought an unstoppable force, one that had learned to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast any opposition. In the face of armies, nations, and cultures far more advanced than their own, the Mongols relied on the same tenacity and resourcefulness that allowed them to survive the steppes. Their strength didn't come from sheer numbers or superior weaponry. It came from their deep understanding of their environment, their ability to adapt quickly, to anticipate challenges, and to strike when others least expected it. The Mongols' military strategies were as agile as the land they roamed, always shifting, always evolving to meet the needs of the moment. They weren't bound by traditional tactics. They were guided by the lessons of the land, the wisdom that came from enduring the toughest of conditions. In their expansion, the Mongols didn't just survive, they conquered. They turned the very forces that had once seemed their greatest enemy into tools of dominance. They used the same relentless spirit that had helped them endure the harsh winters of Mongolia to build the largest contiguous empire the world has ever seen. Their armies moved swiftly across vast territories, adapting to every new environment they encountered. They understood that the key to victory was not brute strength, but the ability to outwit, outpace, and outlast their enemies. And in doing so, they proved that the most formidable power isn't found in numbers or technology, it's found in the unyielding will to adapt, survive, and thrive. The Mongols' success wasn't just about their military prowess. It was about their mindset, their ability to see the world not as a series of obstacles, but as a series of opportunities. Where others saw harsh winters and barren landscapes, the Mongols saw the potential for greatness. They didn't wait for circumstances to change. They adapted and changed with them. And in that adaptability, they found the power to conquer not just the world, but the very nature that sought to destroy them. Their story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It's a story of transformation of a people who were born in the harshest of environments, and instead of being broken by it, were forged by it into the greatest empire the world had ever known. The Mongols didn't just survive the world, they transformed it, using the same principles of survival, adaptability, and resilience that had allowed them to conquer the harshest steppes to build one of the most powerful civilizations in history. So, as we look back at the Mongol Empire, we are reminded that the greatest strength lies not in the things we have, but in how we use what we're given. The Mongols didn't just fight to survive, they fought to live, to thrive, and to shape their world in their image. And in doing so, they created an empire that will be remembered for centuries to come. This movement wasn't arbitrary, it was a battle strategy. They followed the animals, their herds of horses, sheep, camels, and cattle moving to new grazing grounds where food was still abundant and the weather a little more forgiving. Every decision to move was an act of foresight, of adapting to nature's rhythm. When one area was too harsh, they packed up and moved to a new area, where resources were still plentiful, where their animals could graze and thrive, and where they could protect themselves from the worst of the cold. Their homes, made of felt and wood, were designed to be easily assembled and disassembled, allowing them to move swiftly and with purpose. The nomadic life wasn't just about seeking comfort, it was about ensuring survival in a world where the elements could turn on you at any moment. The Mongols weren't just wandering aimlessly. They were deeply attuned to the rhythms of nature. They knew when to move and where to go. They read the sky, the wind, and the land itself to predict what would come next. The weather wasn't something to be feared, it was something to be understood. They had a profound relationship with their environment, knowing the land's moods and how to outsmart it. Their ability to move with the seasons was their greatest strength. Without it, they would have been trapped in an unforgiving land with no hope of survival. They could not afford to stay in one place for long, for that would mean running out of resources. They couldn't waste time in one area, no matter how beautiful or peaceful it seemed, because the elements could change in the blink of an eye. Their very survival depended on their ability to move and adapt to what nature gave them. The nomadic lifestyle, then, wasn't just about freedom, it was a matter of life and death. The Mongols had to move with their animals to ensure they had enough to survive. Staying in one place for too long could lead to resource depletion, leaving their herds without food and water, exposing their shelters to the harshest elements. The cold was always present, and the threat of a storm or blizzard was ever looming. The only way to stay alive in such a harsh, unforgiving environment was to remain constantly adaptive, to always be aware of the changing conditions, and to be ready to leave whenever nature demanded it. In this way, the Mongols didn't just survive the land, they conquered it. Their ability to stay mobile and adjust to the shifting challenges of nature allowed them to maintain their independence and self-sufficiency. They didn't wait for the land to offer them refuge. They created it by always moving, always adapting, always staying ahead. Their homes, their animals, and their entire way of life were designed with this one principle in mind: adaptability. Every aspect of their nomadic lifestyle, from their yurts to their clothing, was created to allow them to pack up, move, and survive in a land that would have easily swallowed others whole. The Mongols' nomadic life was not just about staying alive, it was about perseverance, about adapting to an environment that could change instantaneously. This nomadic way of life was directly tied to the physical and emotional strength we've already discussed. It wasn't just the practicality of moving, it was the mental resilience required to stay constantly alert, constantly ready to shift gears. Each move required mental toughness and psychological endurance, for being ready to leave at a moment's notice meant never being able to rest. The physical labor involved in packing and setting up camp, gathering food, and maintaining the herd demanded a toughness of body and spirit. In the same way the Mongols faced the psychological toll of isolation, their nomadic life provided both challenges and opportunities for mental strength. They faced the harsh realities of nature with a community-focused mindset, where each individual's ability to adapt was linked to the group's survival. The emotional toll of isolation was mitigated by their tight-knit communities, where each member relied on others for both practical help and emotional support. This shared strength of spirit gave them the endurance to keep moving, to continue adapting, and to survive in one of the most difficult environments known to humanity. Surviving in the harsh, unforgiving environment of ancient Mongolia required an immense amount of strength, but it wasn't just the strength of the body. It was the strength of the mind and the spirit. The brutal winters, the howling winds, and the isolation of the steppes weren't just physical challenges. They became a psychological and emotional battle, one that tested the very core of the Mongol people. Imagine the cold being constant day after day, month after month, the relentless biting chill never giving you respite. The wind didn't just sting, it gnawed away at you, slowly, steadily, until every part of you longed for warmth, for comfort, for relief that might never come. The conditions were so extreme that survival was not simply about enduring. It was about finding a way to remain mentally unbroken in the face of it all. It was about maintaining hope when the cold seemed endless and isolation threatened to wear down the spirit. The psychological toll of the environment was immense. It wasn't just the physical cold that pressed down on you, but the emotional and mental weight of isolation. The Mongols didn't live in cities or towns where there were many people to help ease the loneliness of the winter months. They lived in small, close-knit communities scattered across vast expanses of land. The steppes were vast, and when storms arrived, these communities could easily become isolated for days, weeks, or even longer. Imagine the mental strain of being cut off from the rest of the world, knowing that help might be days away if you're injured or in need. The days blend together, the same cold winds howling across the land, and the isolation can feel suffocating. There were no bustling cities to escape to, no sanctuary from the harshness of nature. It was just you, your family, and the land. But in the face of this profound isolation, the Mongols did not just survive, they thrived. They developed an emotional fortitude that was as crucial as their physical strength. The cold didn't just challenge their bodies, it tested their mental toughness. The Mongols faced these challenges bravely, but they did so not alone. The bond between families and tribes became their anchor. In the harshest winters, it was the shared warmth of their yurts, the shared food from their herds, and most importantly, the shared spirit of the Mongol people that carried them through. In the moments when the wind howled loudest and the snow piled higher than the doorframes of their homes, they leaned on each other for support. Community and family were not just comforting, they were survival tools. Every aspect of Mongol life, whether it was gathering food, building shelter, or keeping their herds alive, was shaped by shared effort and mutual reliance. The emotional and mental strength of the Mongol people wasn't just about enduring hardship. It was about facing the elements together, overcoming isolation by finding solidarity in each other. They understood that survival didn't just depend on individual strength, but on their collective resilience. Each person knew that when they faced the cold, they were never facing it alone. Together, they shared the emotional burden of the land, and together, they found ways to adapt, to outlast, and to persevere. Every winter, as the temperature dropped and the snow piled higher, the Mongols didn't just endure, they adapted. They didn't see the harsh conditions as an insurmountable barrier. They saw them as challenges to be overcome. With each passing year, they refined their skills, learning new techniques, innovating, and growing stronger. The land, with its trials and tribulations, became a teacher. Every storm was an opportunity to learn. Every setback, an opportunity to grow. The cold and the storms weren't just enemies to fight against, they were part of the Mongols' journey of survival, resilience, and adaptation. The Mongols responded to the brutality of their environment not with despair, but with creativity and resourcefulness. They adapted their way of life to the land, finding ways to not only survive, but thrive. They learned to use every part of their animals, every piece of their land, and every ounce of energy to make it through the winters. At the heart of this mental resilience was the understanding that survival wasn't just about fighting the cold, it was about outsmarting it. The Mongols understood that physical strength alone wouldn't get them through. They had to think ahead, anticipate storms, prepare for the worst, and adapt quickly. Their strength didn't come from just their muscles, it came from their minds, from their ability to remain calm, focused, and resourceful in the face of overwhelming challenges. Survival for them wasn't passive. It was an active, intelligent process of constantly adapting and innovating. The Mongols didn't just react to the cold, they anticipated it and planned for it, using the environment around them to ensure they could continue to live and thrive. This mental and emotional strength was as vital as their physical toughness. It was a silent force that kept them going when every part of them wanted to give up. The winter may have been cold, and the winds may have howled relentlessly, but it was the community, the mental toughness, and the shared resilience that allowed the Mongols to stand strong year after year. They understood that ultimately, their strength was not just in surviving the elements, it was in their ability to live alongside the land, to adapt to it, and to continue thriving despite the adversity it presented. In the sections that follow, we'll explore how the Mongols applied this emotional and mental resilience in practical ways. From their homes and clothing to their survival techniques for managing livestock and food, we'll uncover how they transformed hardship into opportunity. We'll see how they turned every challenge they faced into a triumph, crafting a culture that wasn't built on simply fighting the elements but on living with them, thriving in them, and conquering them together. So, when we think of the Mongols, it's easy to imagine them as fierce warriors, skilled in battle, and unmatched on horseback. But that perception only scratches the surface of what made them truly remarkable. What really set the Mongols apart, what made them one of the most successful and resilient peoples in history, was their extraordinary ability to adapt to one of the most extreme environments on Earth. Their survival wasn't about brute strength alone. It was about their unwavering adaptability and their deep connection to the land. The brutal geography and climate of Mongolia didn't just influence their daily survival strategies. They became the very bedrock upon which their entire culture was built. The cold, the isolation, the constant battle against nature's unrelenting force became more than just obstacles for them. They became the crucible that forged their identity. Every Mongol, from the youngest child to the battle-hardened warrior, had to understand this land deeply, its rhythms, its dangers, and its beauty. It shaped the way they thought, how they worked together, and how they faced every challenge that came their way. Their fight for survival wasn't just a matter of enduring the harsh winters, it was about thriving in spite of them. These conditions didn't break the Mongols. They transformed them into one of the most resourceful, innovative, and tenacious peoples the world has ever known. The struggle against freezing temperatures, fierce storms, and isolation taught them to use every resource at their disposal. From their homes, built to trap heat in the bitter cold, to their clothing, designed with the precision of survival engineers, the Mongols became masters of their environment. They used not just their strength, but their intelligence to craft tools, build shelters, and perfect their survival strategies. The land that once seemed so harsh became their greatest ally, and every challenge it presented was met with ingenuity and determination. Perhaps most incredibly, the Mongols didn't simply fight to stay alive, they thrived. They turned every challenge into an opportunity for growth. Their nomadic lifestyle, which might have seemed impossible to others in such extreme conditions, was the key to their endurance. Moving with the seasons, following their herds, and adapting their homes and clothes to the ever-changing conditions gave them a unique advantage. The Mongols understood the balance between respecting the land and using it to their benefit. The steppes were their home, and they knew how to live in harmony with the land, constantly adjusting to its harsh demands, while using everything it provided to not only survive, but flourish. In the following sections, we'll dive into the remarkable survival techniques that allowed the Mongols to not just survive these harsh winters, but master them. We'll look at the ingenious design of their homes, the layers of clothing that kept them warm, and the resources they used to ensure both their own survival and the survival of their precious livestock. The Mongols used every tool at their disposal, from fire and felt to animal hides and wool, creating a sophisticated system of warmth and protection that allowed them to endure the coldest months. Their ability to adapt wasn't just about surviving in nature, it was about living in nature, alongside it, learning from it, and ultimately becoming one with it. So stay with us as we explore these incredible methods and survival tactics. You'll discover how the Mongols didn't just exist in the cold, they mastered it, creating a culture that was built on the strength of their adaptability. Their survival wasn't just about fighting the elements, it was about living with them. And in the process, they not only survived the harshest conditions, but went on to build one of the most successful and powerful empires the world has ever known. Get ready to learn about their incredible resourcefulness and how they turned adversity into opportunity, using the land itself as their greatest teacher. Having laid the foundation by understanding the harsh conditions of the Mongolian steppes, we can now explore the survival strategies the Mongols used to endure the brutal winters and extreme weather. The Mongols' way of life was built on the principle of adaptation. They didn't just survive the conditions, they actively turned the challenges of their environment into strengths, using their ingenuity, mobility, and deep connection to the land to thrive. One of the most ingenious and practical survival solutions the Mongols developed to combat the extreme cold of the Mongolian steppes was the yurt, a portable, highly functional home designed specifically to withstand the brutal winter conditions. The yurt wasn't just a shelter, it was a fortress against the cold, a carefully crafted structure built with purpose and practicality in mind. In a landscape where the weather could change in an instant, where temperatures regularly plunged to -40 degrees Celsius and snowstorms could come without warning, the yurt became the Mongols' lifeline. Its design was as much about survival as it was about comfort. At the heart of the yurt's ingenious design was its round shape. Unlike square or rectangular homes, which offer greater surface area for the wind to push against, the circular design of the yurt reduced wind resistance, helping it withstand the fierce and often destructive winds that regularly swept across the steppes. The Mongols knew that the land was not just harsh, it was constantly shifting, and the winds were merciless. By designing their homes in the round, they could resist the wind's pressure and reduce the chances of structural collapse. This design allowed the yurt to stay stable in the face of intense storms and even heavy snow, providing a secure and insulated refuge in a land where anything else might have been torn apart by the element. The structure of the yurt itself was built using a wooden frame, typically made from local materials that could be easily sourced and assembled. This frame was then covered with layers of felt, made from sheep's wool, camel wool, or yak fur, natural materials that have excellent insulating properties. The wool felt was incredibly effective at trapping heat. Wool is a unique material in that it retains warmth even when wet, and its ability to create a barrier between the interior of the yurt and the external cold made it perfect for the harsh Mongolian winters. The Mongols would add multiple layers of felt to their yurts, especially during the bitterly cold months, to ensure the warmth inside remained contained. The felt layers served a dual purpose. Not only did they insulate the structure from the cold, but they also acted as a shield against the snow and wind. During the winter, when the snow could fall in heavy drifts, the yurt would maintain its integrity, keeping the Mongols and their families protected from the dangerous elements outside. Even in the dead of winter, when the temperatures outside would drop so low that even the hardest ice would form, the warmth inside the yurt remained surprisingly stable. This warmth was a life-saving feature, offering comfort and protection in an environment that could freeze the body in minutes. Inside the yurt, the kyrg, a small yet powerful stove, was the beating heart of daily life. This central stove was fueled by a combination of wood, dung, and dried manure, materials that were plentiful in the steppes. These fuels weren't just efficient, they were practical. In a land where traditional firewood could be scarce, the Mongols turned to the resources they had in abundance. The kyrg provided heat for the yurt, but it wasn't just a heater, it was also the main cooking source for the family. The heat from the stove would radiate outward, warming the space, while the felt walls of the yurt would trap the heat, ensuring that the warmth stayed inside. This central heating system allowed the Mongols to cook their meals, stay warm, and live comfortably, even when the outside temperatures made it impossible for other people to even leave their homes. It was a perfect example of how the Mongols utilized every resource available to make their lives in the steppes sustainable, practical, and even enjoyable during the harsh winters. But what truly set the yurt apart from other forms of shelter was its portability. The Mongols were not just surviving in one place, they were constantly on the move, chasing better grazing grounds for their herds, avoiding severe weather, and following the migratory patterns of their animals. The mobility of the yurt made it the ideal home for a nomadic lifestyle. The yurt could be disassembled and packed up in just a few hours, allowing the Mongols to pick up and move swiftly when the conditions demanded it. Whether they were moving due to seasonal changes or in response to the arrival of a blizzard, the yurt gave them the freedom to relocate without sacrificing warmth or shelter. This ability to move quickly and efficiently was a crucial survival strategy in the Mongolian steppes, where the weather could shift at any moment. The Mongols understood that waiting out a storm or staying too long in one place could spell disaster, so they used their yurts to remain mobile while staying protected. As they traveled across the plains, the portability of the yurt ensured that the Mongols could avoid the worst of the winter weather and seek out the best resources for their animals and families. Moreover, the yurt wasn't just a shelter, it was a community hub. While the structure itself was portable, the yurt served as the center of Mongol life, where families gathered to share meals, rest, and bond. The central hearth or stove, surrounded by the warmth of the fire, created a space of unity and family strength, a place where the Mongols could find comfort even in the midst of the most extreme conditions. The communal aspect of the yurt also helped to reinforce Mongol social structures. Families, clans, and tribes would come together, share resources, and offer emotional support during the long winters, building a sense of solidarity that was vital for their survival. The yurt was also designed with practicality in mind. Each part of the yurt, whether the felt covering, the frame, or the interior arrangements, was specifically designed to optimize energy efficiency. The small, compact nature of the yurt meant it could be heated quickly, while the felt walls insulated it, reducing the need for constant fuel and allowing the Mongols to stay warm for longer periods without having to feed the fire constantly. This efficient design also meant they could preserve food, warmth, and even water during the harsh winters, which made survival in such extreme conditions not just possible but sustainable. In addition to their ingenious homes, the Mongols developed a highly effective system of clothing designed to withstand the extreme cold of the Mongolian steppes while allowing them to move freely. Much like their yurts, which were crafted with mobility and adaptability in mind, their clothing was built to serve the same purpose: survival in a harsh environment. The key to their clothing system was layering, a technique that allowed the Mongols to trap warmth while still enabling them to move quickly and efficiently across the frozen expanse of the steppes. Unlike modern winter clothes, which often rely on a single bulky layer for warmth, the Mongols used a combination of carefully arranged layers, each designed for a specific function: to trap heat, protect from the wind, and keep them agile in a constantly changing environment. The Mongols' clothing was made from a combination of animal furs, wool, and leather materials readily available to them on the steppes, which also served a practical purpose in the harsh conditions. The outer layers of their clothing were typically made from tough leather or animal skins, such as sheepskin, camel fur, or even yak hide. These materials were durable and resistant to the biting wind and snowstorms, providing a tough barrier against the elements. But it wasn't just about protection. The tough outer layers also served to shield the Mongols from the abrasive snow, which could be so sharp and constant that it would tear at unprotected skin, causing frostbite or injury. The animal furs served another key function, keeping the Mongols warm without restricting their movement, which was essential in their nomadic lifestyle. Whether they were chasing herds, riding horses, or packing and moving their yurts. Underneath these tough outer layers, the Mongols wore woolen garments that provided much-needed insulation. Wool has an innate ability to trap air and retain warmth, keeping the Mongols warm even in the coldest temperatures. The wool layers were designed to keep warmth close to the body while still allowing the Mongols to maintain mobility. This system of layered clothing meant that the Mongols could adjust their insulation according to the conditions, shedding or adding layers depending on the changing temperature, while still being able to move swiftly, whether riding horses, hiking across snow-covered plains, or tending to their herds. The Mongols' clothing was specifically designed to allow them to move without restriction, an essential factor in their survival as nomads. The boots they wore were another key innovation, crafted from sheepskin or camel fur. These boots were perfectly suited to the harsh, snowy conditions of the steppes. These boots were made to keep the feet warm, dry, and protected from the biting cold. The fur lining created an insulating barrier that prevented the snow from seeping in, while also ensuring that the foot remained warm even in the deepest of snowdrifts. The design of these boots allowed the Mongols to travel for days at a time without the risk of frostbite or hypothermia, which could strike when feet were exposed to the cold for too long. Their hats, gloves, and mittens were equally as important, crafted from thick, insulating furs to provide full protection for the head, hands, and feet, the areas most vulnerable to frostbite. These were not just accessories, but necessary survival gear that allowed the Mongols to endure the harshest conditions. The fur-lined collars of their coats, the thick leather straps on their boots, and the snug fur hoods were all designed with the same principle in mind: protection. Each piece was crafted for maximum warmth and functionality, ensuring that the Mongols could go about their daily tasks without being hindered by the freezing cold. These clothing innovations made it possible for the Mongols to survive, thrive, and continue their nomadic lifestyle despite the brutal conditions. Just as the yurt served as a fortress against the cold, the clothing the Mongols wore was a personal fortress, providing them with the same essential function: protection. In the same way that the yurt's felt-covered layers insulated its inhabitants from the outside cold, the layered clothing system insulated the Mongols' bodies from the severe conditions of the steppes. While the yurt kept them warm and secure at night, the clothing ensured they could move and work during the day, performing the demanding tasks required for their survival. The portability and mobility that defined their nomadic lifestyle were also mirrored in their clothing. Just as they packed up their yurts and traveled across the steppes, their clothing allowed them to move lightly, efficiently, and comfortably, ensuring that they could keep up with the demands of life as nomads. The flexibility of their clothing systems meant they could adjust to changing conditions, just as they adapted to different environments by moving their homes. Both the yurt and the clothing were part of the same survival strategy. They allowed the Mongols to stay warm, protected, and mobile, giving them the freedom to move with the seasons and continue their nomadic lifestyle despite the harsh winters. The layering system wasn't just about clothing, it was about adaptability, allowing them to change with the seasons and adjust to the extreme cold in ways that would be impossible with a more rigid, non-portable system of shelter or attire. Together, these elements, yurts and clothing, became the two pillars of Mongol survival in the extreme climate. While the yurt provided shelter, the clothing allowed them to thrive outside of it, facing the winds, snow, and cold on a daily basis without losing their freedom or mobility. Just as the yurt was designed for efficiency and adaptability, so too was their clothing, two perfectly matched solutions that ensured their survival in the face of nature's most brutal challenges. The Mongols' livestock were not just a source of food. They were at the very core of their survival and way of life. The Mongols relied on their herds of horses, yaks, sheep, and camels for mobility, resources, and even companionship. These animals were more than simply animals. They were lifelines, providing essential sustenance and enabling the Mongols to navigate their harsh environment. Horses, in particular, were central to Mongol life. They weren't just used for travel and battle. They were also vital sources of milk and meat. Horses played a crucial role in the Mongols' ability to remain mobile, allowing them to travel across the vast steppes quickly, seeking new grazing grounds or escaping dangerous storms that could otherwise trap them in place. In such a vast and unyielding land, mobility was the key to survival, and horses were the vehicles of this freedom. But managing livestock wasn't solely about ensuring the Mongols had food. It was about ensuring their herds could survive the brutal winters, which posed a constant threat to the animals and their ability to sustain the Mongol way of life. The cold and wind were just as harsh on the Mongols' livestock as they were on the people themselves. The extreme temperatures and unpredictable weather of the steppes made caring for the animals a challenge that required both skill and foresight. The Mongols had a profound understanding of how to protect their herds from the elements. During the harshest months of winter, when temperatures dropped to -40°C and blizzards swept across the steppes, the Mongols would often herd their animals into sheltered areas to protect them from the worst of the wind and snow. These natural shelters, hills, valleys, or rocky outcrops provided some relief from the biting cold. The Mongols knew where to find these safe places and how to use the land to provide shelter for their animals, ensuring their survival during the worst of the storms. Keeping their herds close to the yurts was another strategy the Mongols used during the coldest months. The animals needed to be close enough to ensure that they could receive adequate food and water, which could be difficult to come by in freezing conditions. The nomadic lifestyle meant that the Mongols were always on the move, but they understood that during the winter, proximity to their herds was vital. Keeping the animals near the warmth of the yurts allowed them to protect and monitor them more easily. The Mongols also used the manure from their animals as a fuel source. Dung, which could be scarce in such a cold climate, was gathered and used to fuel the fires inside their yurts, keeping their homes warm and providing the heat necessary for cooking and surviving. The Mongols' profound connection to their animals wasn't just a matter of practicality, it was also deeply cultural. They didn't see their animals merely as sources of food and transportation. They were part of the very fabric of their existence. Horses, in particular, were seen as companions and often played central roles in Mongol society. Caring for livestock became an essential part of their identity, one that was passed down through generations. Every Mongol, from the youngest to the oldest, had a role to play in the care of their herds, and herding skills were highly valued. Animal husbandry was more than just a survival tactic. It was a way of life that sustained and bonded families, clans, and tribes across the vast steppes. Just as the Mongols depended on their livestock for food, warmth, and mobility, they also relied on the resources provided by their animals to protect themselves from the elements. The skins, fur, and wool from their herds were key ingredients in the clothing system that kept them warm and protected in the extreme cold. The sheepskin used in their boots and jackets, the camel fur worn in their hats and gloves, and the yak wool woven into their layers were all sourced from the very animals they cared for. This connection between livestock care and clothing was central to the Mongols' survival in such a harsh environment. The animal skins used in clothing were carefully processed and treated to create the most effective protection against the cold. Just as the Mongols kept their animals warm and protected during the winter months, they also used every part of their herds to shield themselves from the brutal temperatures. Fur-lined collars, fur boots, and leather gloves were all products of their livestock, turning the animals into tools of survival in a land where both human and animal life were continuously at risk from the freezing cold. Each piece of clothing wasn't just practical, it was essential for life. The Mongols didn't just see their animals as a source of food or transport, they saw them as partners in their survival. The fur they used wasn't only for warmth, it became an insulator, a barrier that could protect their skin from the biting winds that howled across the vast steppes. Their boots, sturdy and thick, shielded them from snow and ice, allowing them to travel long distances without fear of frostbite. Even their gloves, often made from animal hides, were designed to allow them to handle their tools and weapons, all while keeping their hands warm in conditions that would freeze most people solid. The ingenuity behind their clothing wasn't just a reflection of their resourcefulness, it was a lifeline that allowed them to navigate the harshest of winters, maintaining their mobility and their ability to sustain themselves. They took what the land gave them, transformed it, and turned it into the very fabric of their survival. In the end, every animal, every hide, every piece of fur became a testament to their deep understanding of the land and their unbreakable will to endure. Moreover, the Mongols understood that every aspect of their life was interdependent. The resources from their herds helped ensure that they could stay warm in their yurts and clothing, while the mobility of their animals helped them stay ahead of the worst of the winter storms. This reciprocal relationship between the Mongols and their livestock was essential not only for practical reasons, but for the very fabric of their survival. Every element of Mongol life, from building their homes to creating clothing to managing their herds, was a calculated response to the harsh environment, driven by a need to be both resourceful and mobile. Everything the Mongols did, the design of their yurts, the clothing they wore, and even their herding practices, was meticulously crafted around the necessity of mobility. The Mongols understood that the land they called home was unpredictable. The weather could change in an instant, and the cold, snow, and storms didn't wait for anyone to be ready. If they stayed in one place too long, they risked running out of resources, losing access to fresh grazing grounds for their livestock, or worse, getting trapped in a blizzard that could bury them and their homes. The Mongol survival was not just about enduring the harsh conditions, it was about adapting to them. And the key to this adaptability was mobility. The nomadic lifestyle was not just a cultural choice for the Mongols, it was a survival necessity. The very nature of their environment, where the weather could go from mild to deadly in a matter of hours, meant that staying in one place was simply too risky. The Mongols understood that in order to survive, they had to always be prepared to move, to pick up their homes, their herds, and their entire way of life at a moment's notice. The flexibility to move was as much about their safety as it was about their livelihood. The unpredictability of the weather in the Mongolian steppes meant that the Mongols couldn't afford to wait until a storm arrived before taking action. They had to stay ahead of it. Their homes, the yurts, were designed for exactly this purpose. The portability of the yurt was crucial. In the same way that the round shape of the yurt helped it withstand powerful winds, its structure allowed it to be quickly disassembled and reassembled as the Mongols followed their herds to new grazing grounds or sought shelter from an approaching storm. The ability to move quickly and efficiently wasn't just about convenience, it was about survival. The Mongols knew that staying put was not an option. The yurt was not only an insulated refuge against the cold, but also a mobile shelter that allowed them to escape from the worst of the weather. Their clothing was designed with the same purpose: adaptability. By using a layering system, the Mongols could adjust their clothing to fit whatever the weather demanded, whether it was shedding layers when the temperature suddenly rose or adding layers when the winds turned colder. The mobility of their clothing allowed them to move freely while ensuring that they were always protected against the cold. The fur-lined boots, leather gloves, and insulated coats allowed them to travel across the steppes without fear of frostbite, even when the ground was covered in deep snow or ice. The layers of their clothing were as dynamic as their nomadic lifestyle, adapting to the challenges they faced as they moved with the seasons. Just as the Mongols' homes and clothing were designed for movement, so too was their approach to managing livestock. Their herds of horses, camels, yaks, and sheep were not just sources of food and transportation. They were the key to the Mongols' mobility. The animals allowed them to travel quickly across vast stretches of land, following the changing seasons and searching for better grazing. The horses were particularly important, as they were used not only for riding but also for carrying supplies and pulling carts. Without the mobility of their animals, the Mongols would have been unable to sustain their nomadic lifestyle. The herds were also vital for food, with milk from cows and camels and meat from sheep, offering a constant source of nutrition in an environment where fresh food could be difficult to find. But the mobility of the Mongols wasn't limited to their homes and clothing, it was embedded in their approach to herding. The Mongols didn't just follow their herds, they adapted their movement patterns to stay ahead of the weather. They would herd their animals to sheltered areas when snowstorms were approaching, using natural barriers like hills or forests to shield the animals from the worst of the cold. Keeping the herds close to their yurts in the winter allowed the Mongols to protect them, ensuring they had enough food and water and could be cared for even in the worst conditions. The mobility of the Mongols' herding practices allowed them to avoid being trapped by a storm, keeping them one step ahead of nature. For the Mongols, mobility wasn't just about moving from one place to another, it was fundamental to their survival and ability to adapt to the extreme environment they lived in. The steppes of Mongolia were not a static landscape, they were constantly changing, with the seasons dictating the availability of resources and the harshness of the weather. The Mongols understood this dynamic relationship between the land and the environment. They knew that the land was never predictable, and to thrive, they too had to remain fluid and adaptable. Their nomadic way of life wasn't born out of a simple desire to travel. It was a direct response to the extreme conditions of their homeland. The Mongols didn't simply build homes or wear warm clothing and expect to survive. They understood that their mobility was the key to adapting to the shifting and often unforgiving climate. Staying stationary was not just inconvenient, it could be deadly. By constantly moving, the Mongols could escape the worst of the elements, find better grazing grounds, and locate new sources of food and water. They knew that staying too long in one place, especially when resources ran low or when storms were approaching, could trap them and their herds in life-threatening conditions. Movement allowed them to stay ahead of nature's challenges, whether it was a blizzard, heavy snowfall, or freezing temperatures. As nomads, they were never tied down to one location and could always seek out better conditions. They would follow herds of animals, chase the milder weather, or relocate to areas where they knew food was plentiful and shelter was available. This freedom of movement ensured that they could always remain in optimal conditions, which was crucial in a land where the seasons were unpredictable and the weather could change overnight. The Mongols didn't just survive the cold, they found ways to thrive by moving before the worst conditions hit, securing shelter and food in the safest regions. But the benefits of mobility extended beyond merely avoiding the cold or seeking shelter. By moving constantly, the Mongols could use the land to their advantage, always positioning themselves to take advantage of the best grazing grounds for their herds and the most sheltered spots for their yurts. The land was their greatest resource, and their ability to read it, understand it, and move accordingly was what set the Mongols apart from other peoples. They didn't just live off the land, they worked with it, constantly adjusting to its rhythms. Their yurts were designed with mobility in mind, allowing the Mongols to pack up quickly and set up in a new location with minimal disruption. This design ensured they could move fast, while still having a safe, warm home to return to. The portability of the yurt was not just a convenience, it was a critical survival tool. The structure of the yurt, with its round shape and felt covering, was perfect for traveling. It could be dismantled and reassembled in just a few hours, making the entire process of moving from one area to another fast and efficient. This allowed the Mongols to stay ahead of the weather and avoid becoming trapped by the harsh winter storms that could sweep in suddenly and bury entire communities. The clothing worn by the Mongols was also designed for mobility. Unlike many cultures that relied on thick, restrictive layers of clothing for warmth, the Mongols' layered system of clothes allowed them to stay warm while still moving freely. The ability to add or remove layers based on the changing temperatures meant that the Mongols could adapt their clothing to the shifting environment, keeping themselves warm and protected as they traveled. Their boots, coats, and hats made of fur, sheepskin, and leather were not only built for protection but for mobility, ensuring that the Mongols could move quickly and comfortably, no matter how cold or treacherous the weather. Just as the yurts provided shelter and the clothing ensured warmth, the Mongols' livestock provided the resources they needed to survive and move. Horses, camels, yaks, and sheep were integral to the Mongols' nomadic way of life. The horses, in particular, played a critical role in their mobility, allowing the Mongols to travel long distances, move quickly between grazing areas, and escape bad weather. The horses were also used to transport supplies, and, in times of need, they could be slaughtered for meat or milk, ensuring the Mongols never ran out of resources. But the mobility of the Mongols wasn't limited to just their homes, clothing, and animals. It was a central part of their way of thinking. It became ingrained in their culture. Mobility meant freedom. The Mongols understood that being able to move at any time was essential to remaining in control of their environment. When the land offered scarce resources or when storms threatened, their ability to leave and find better conditions gave them the upper hand. They were not at the mercy of the land, they were active participants, using adaptability and freedom as their greatest tools for survival. This constant movement also allowed the Mongols to maintain their cultural and social bonds. While traveling, they would often form tight-knit communities, helping each other with the logistical challenges of nomadic life, such as moving yurts, caring for livestock, and gathering food. These strong communal ties ensured that the Mongols could face the extreme conditions together, sharing resources and knowledge about the best places to graze, shelter, and avoid dangerous storms. In the heart of the Mongolian steppes, where the air itself could freeze in an instant, and the land lay buried under an endless blanket of snow, Genghis Khan was born into a world that demanded more than mere survival. For most, the brutal winters were a curse, an insurmountable barrier to life itself. But for Genghis Khan, they were a battleground where he would learn not only to endure, but to master the very elements that could break others. The freezing temperatures, the relentless winds, the isolation of the vast, barren land, these weren't just obstacles in his path. They were the crucible in which his strength, resilience, and genius would be forged. Long before he united the Mongol tribes and created one of the most powerful empires the world has ever known, Genghis Khan had to first survive the unforgiving winters of his homeland. These winters weren't just cold, they were life-threatening. The temperature could plunge to -40 degrees Celsius, and the biting wind could cut through even the thickest fur. But from the moment he began his journey, the young Temujin, Genghis Khan's birth name, understood that in this world, the elements were not something to fight against. They were something to outsmart, to use to his advantage. Living as a nomad on the steppes required more than just the physical endurance to withstand the cold. It demanded innovation, foresight, and mental fortitude. The nomadic lifestyle, with its constant movement and reliance on the land and animals, became the key to survival. While others might have fled the harsh winters, Genghis Khan and his people thrived by adapting to their environment. They built homes, yurts, designed to endure the coldest of winters. These round, portable structures were not just shelters. They were ingenious designs crafted to shield their inhabitants from the elements. Inside, a central stove powered by wood, dung, and even dried manure provided much-needed warmth to survive the freezing nights. But Genghis Khan didn't just survive the winter, he mastered it. As he led his people across the vast steppes, he utilized every advantage the land offered, from the skills needed to track and hunt wild animals in the snow, to the deep knowledge of the land's rhythms and changes. His leadership wasn't just about strength in battle. It was about understanding the nature of survival in one of the harshest environments on Earth. The extreme cold, far from being a barrier, became the crucible in which his empire was born. He took what others feared, the brutal winters, and turned them into the very foundation of his strength, teaching his people how to move, how to survive, and how to adapt to even the most unforgiving conditions. In the face of impossible odds, Genghis Khan's people learned that the key to thriving wasn't just about surviving. It was about mastering their environment, using the brutal winters to shape them into one of the most resilient and innovative cultures in history. And this adaptability, born in the freezing steppes, would carry the Mongols across continents, laying the groundwork for an empire that would change the course of history forever. Genghis Khan's legacy reminds us that resilience isn't just about enduring hardships, it's about turning them into opportunities for growth, strength, and triumph. The extreme cold that gripped the Mongolian steppes wasn't something that could be avoided or conquered with brute force alone. It was something that had to be understood, respected, and worked with. It became a partner in the survival and success of his people. Just as he harnessed the power of the harsh environment to propel his people forward, we too can learn to harness the challenges in our lives. When faced with adversity, we often see it as an enemy, something to fight against. But the Mongols, led by Genghis Khan, understood that true strength comes from adapting to the environment, not resisting it. It was this wisdom that enabled them to survive one of the most extreme climates on Earth, and ultimately to thrive in it. The Mongol Empire wasn't built on fear of the cold. It was built on an intimate knowledge of nature and the ability to adapt to its rhythms. And so, for anyone today who finds themselves facing the most unforgiving conditions, whether it's the physical chill of winter, the weight of isolation, or the overwhelming weight of life's challenges, remember the story of the Mongols. Remember that you, too, can turn adversity into an ally. Whether you're in the frozen steppes or the heat of a personal struggle, you have the same power to adapt, to outsmart the challenges around you, and to thrive. Like Genghis Khan, you are capable of transforming the harshest conditions into the foundation of your own strength and success. For those living in extreme conditions, whether they are the cold winds of winter or the metaphorical storms of life, take heart. You too can adapt to the environment around you. You can move with the seasons, adjust your mindset, and make use of every resource at your disposal to not only survive but to thrive. The very elements that challenge you today could be the ones that forge you into something stronger tomorrow. Just as Genghis Khan saw the brutal winter as a testing ground for his leadership, we too can see our struggles as tests of our resilience, intelligence, and adaptability. In the face of harshness, the Mongols didn't just endure, they conquered. They didn't just survive the cold, they mastered it, creating a legacy that endures to this day. You too can rise above the difficulties that life throws at you, finding strength, wisdom, and innovation in the most difficult of circumstances. Adapt to the world around you, learn from it, and let it shape you into the person you were always meant to be. Like Genghis Khan, you have the power to conquer the impossible, to overcome what others fear, and to build a life of strength, resilience, and brilliance no matter what storms may come. The Mongol people, led by the indomitable spirit of Genghis Khan, embodied a unique and unparalleled resilience in the face of nature's harshest challenges. Their story is not just one of survival, it is a testament to human strength, ingenuity, and adaptability. For centuries, they lived through bitter winters where temperatures would plunge to -40 degrees Celsius, where the land was often barren, and where every day was a battle against the relentless forces of nature. Yet, the Mongols didn't merely endure, they thrived. Their survival was not due to sheer strength alone, but to their profound connection to the land and their ability to use it to their advantage. They understood the rhythms of the seasons, the direction of the winds, and how to predict the storms before they even arrived. They designed homes, like the yurt, which could withstand the harshest winds and retain heat, allowing them to create warmth even in the coldest months. Their clothing, crafted from the skins of animals they raised and hunted, was designed not only for protection but for mobility, enabling them to keep moving, to stay agile, and to never be trapped by the unforgiving environment. This resourcefulness, this deep understanding of the world around them, formed the foundation of their survival, and it would propel them to become one of the most formidable empires the world has ever seen. At the heart of this resilience was Genghis Khan himself, a man who rose from the harshest of beginnings, from the frozen, windswept steppes, to become one of history's most powerful and influential leaders. His story is one of transformation not only of himself but of his people and the land they lived on. He understood that survival wasn't just about overcoming physical obstacles, it was about adapting, outsmarting nature, and turning it into an ally. Genghis Khan's ability to read the land, his profound understanding of the elements, and his unyielding determination allowed him to forge an empire that stretched from the steppes of Mongolia to the heart of Europe and Asia. He didn't just survive the harsh winters. He used the very challenges of his environment to fuel his rise, to sharpen his mind, and to galvanize his people. His resilience was not about enduring hardship passively. It was about meeting challenges head-on, learning from them, and using that knowledge to grow stronger. This ancient wisdom and survival instinct that the Mongols possessed are not relics of the past, they are lessons for all of us today. To those who live in extreme conditions, or who face life's harshest circumstances, take heart from the Mongol legacy. Whether you're facing freezing temperatures, droughts, isolation, or obstacles that seem insurmountable, remember that the environment that challenges you also holds the key to your survival. The Mongols proved that by understanding and respecting nature, by adapting to it, and by using it wisely, you can survive, thrive, and even conquer. Just as Genghis Khan read the land and adapted his strategies to meet each new challenge, you too can read the world around you, adapt to your circumstances, and find solutions where others might see none. In the face of extreme adversity, the Mongols didn't retreat, they adapted. They learned, and they thrived. Every storm, every hardship became a lesson. They built their homes to move with them, understanding that the key to survival lay not in staying put, but in remaining mobile, in remaining flexible. They made their homes portable, their clothing adaptive, and their minds keen, knowing that the harshest seasons wouldn't last forever. They learned to use what little they had, wood, animal skins, wool, and to turn these natural materials into tools for survival. And they did all of this not just to live, but to live with dignity, strength, and purpose. So, to anyone facing the elements today, whether it be the relentless cold, the isolation of harsh terrains, or even the metaphorical storms of life, take inspiration from the Mongols. Know that the challenge you face is not an obstacle. It is an opportunity. You are not defined by the adversity you face, but by how you rise to meet it. Like the Mongols, you can find a way to adapt, to move with the changing seasons, to use every resource at your disposal to build something strong, something resilient, something that will last. You have the strength within you to outsmart the challenges of nature, to bend it to your will, and to thrive despite the odds. When Genghis Khan faced the brutal cold of the Mongolian steppes, he didn't see the harsh winter as an enemy, he saw it as a teacher, a test of his resolve, of his ability to lead his people through the most unforgiving of conditions. And in the same way, the challenges you face, whether they are natural or personal, are not there to break you. They are there to teach you, to shape you, and to forge your spirit in the fire of adversity. You, like the Mongols, have within you the resilience to endure, the intelligence to adapt, and the courage to thrive. Nature, with all its harshness, is not something to fear, it is something to understand and embrace. It can be both a formidable adversary and an incredible ally. In the same way the Mongols transformed the land into a source of strength, so too can you use the challenges in your life to grow stronger, to become more resourceful, and to build a life of endurance and resilience. Just as the Mongols thrived in the cold, so can you find warmth in the challenges you face. Just as Genghis Khan rose from the steppe to conquer the world, you too have the potential to rise above your circumstances, to learn from them, and to emerge victorious. The cold, the wind, the storm, they are not the end. They are the beginning. Just like the Mongols, who faced a world where survival was a daily battle against nature's fiercest forces, you too can rise from adversity, stronger than ever. The challenges of life, however daunting, are not meant to break you, they are meant to shape you, to forge you into something unshakable, something capable of enduring whatever life throws at you. And though the storm may seem relentless, remember, every storm eventually passes. Every struggle eventually fades into the past. You stand not just as a survivor, but as a warrior, equipped with the same resilience, wisdom, and strength that carried the Mongols through the brutal, unforgiving winters. They didn't just endure the elements, they adapted to them, using every hardship to fuel their rise. The same spirit that drove them to conquer the seemingly insurmountable challenges of the steppe lives within you. You have the power to adapt, to learn, and to grow from the very challenges that seem intent on stopping you. The elements that threaten to push you down are the very forces that will shape you into someone unstoppable. Remember, you are not alone in this. You carry with you the legacy of countless others who have faced hardship and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined. The storms of life may test you, but they do not define you. What defines you is your ability to stand tall, to face the cold with courage, and to move forward even when the world seems frozen in place. Like the Mongols, you have the power to make the world bend to your will, not through brute force, but through the unwavering strength of your mind, your heart, and your spirit. The cold will pass, the winds will calm, the storms will end. And in the aftermath, when the clouds finally part and the sun shines once more, you will stand, not just having survived, but having conquered. You will stand tall, knowing that the journey you have endured, the battles you have fought, and the challenges you have overcome have made you stronger, more resilient, and more powerful than ever before. You will stand as a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, knowing that the greatest strength is not found in the absence of obstacles, but in the courage to face them head-on and emerge victorious. So take a deep breath. Feel the wind, the cold, the storm. Let it pierce your skin and challenge your resolve. Know that in this moment, you are not just facing the elements, you are facing a test, a trial, a battle for your very spirit. And just as the Mongols stood tall against the bitter winds and endless snow, you too can stand strong against whatever life throws your way. The cold, the wind, the storm, they are not the end. They are merely the beginning. They are the forging ground where your strength, your resilience, your inner fire will rise. You see, the elements do not have the final word. Life's storms, the challenges you face, they cannot define you. No, you are the one who decides your own fate. Just like the Mongols, who thrived in the face of impossible odds, you hold the power within you to adapt, to rise, and to turn the harshest conditions into opportunities for growth. Every gust of wind, every drop of freezing rain, every moment of adversity is not a setback. It is a lesson. It is a chance to grow stronger, to build endurance, and to sharpen your resolve. The Mongols didn't have the comforts and luxuries that many of us do today. They didn't have easy solutions or warm shelters waiting for them. They had nothing but their courage, their resourcefulness, and an unwavering belief that they could conquer anything the land and the world threw at them. And neither do you. You have within you the same grit, the same will to survive, to thrive, and to rise above. So when you face your next challenge, whether it's a difficult situation at work, a personal struggle, or a seemingly insurmountable obstacle, remember the Mongols. Remember how they used the harshest winters to shape them into an unstoppable force. You too can use life's coldest moments to strengthen your mind, your body, and your spirit. Stand tall. Don't shy away from the storm. Embrace it. Know that each step forward, no matter how difficult, is a victory. Because in the end, it is not the challenges that define you. It is how you rise to meet them. You are the master of your own journey, the conqueror of your own destiny. No one else. Nothing else. Only you can decide how your story unfolds. The storm may be fierce, but so are you. The cold may bite, but your heart will remain warm. And in the end, you will stand victorious, having not just survived, but thrived just like the Mongols, just like the greatest conquerors in history. The world is yours for the taking, and every challenge that stands before you is simply an opportunity in disguise, waiting for you to claim it. Keep moving forward, step by step, no matter how tough the journey gets. The path may not always be easy, but with every stride you take, you're not just moving toward your goal, you're becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable of overcoming whatever comes your way. Keep moving forward with unwavering belief in yourself, knowing that the obstacles you face today are the stepping stones for the success you'll embrace tomorrow. The world may try to hold you back, but you, with your resilience and your drive, will keep pressing on, knowing that your destiny is yours to shape and conquer.